Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first of many webinar series brought to you by Risk Education. And I'm your host, Sanjay Vishasekar, for the day. Let's kick off. So you might be wondering what the purpose of these webinars are. So the purpose of this particular webinar is to provide insights and inspiration for aspiring accountants who are looking to embark or advance their careers in Australia. Through the next hour, you'll be having a series of very insightful and enlightening conversations with our three panelists who are accomplished accounting professionals, and we aim to explore their career journeys, their stories, their challenges that they faced along the way, and best of all, the key learnings that help them succeed to see where they are today. And with these experiences, we hope to give and provide our audience with valuable knowledge and practical tips as to how they can transform themselves into successful and fulfilling accounting professionals who can succeed in Australia. A few housekeeping rules before we proceed. As all of you can see, we are connected via Zoom, but this is not your usual Zoom settings. It's ideally a webinar format that we are following. You will not be able to speak, but if you do have any questions, we have the Q&A portal on the bottom of the screen. You can raise your questions, and towards the end of the session, I will be handpicking a few interesting questions, and we will be discussing them along with our panelists. So the sponsor, today's webinar series is sponsored by Brisk Education. So join with Brisk Education to lay the foundation for your future career in accounting and upskill yourself in both technical and soft skills to succeed as an accountant in Australia. Without further ado, now let's jump on to the panel. You might be wondering who are the three gentlemen who's with us today. So we have an elite panel. First off, I would like to call him a global trotter. He is currently the director of ASPAC Audit and Assurance at KPMG Australia. From his humble beginnings at EY, he has worked all of the Big Four, worked across multiple countries, hence the name Global Trotter, and cultures, and has now made his second home at KPMG. He is a graduate from the University of Sri Jawadhanapura, and is also a fellow member of CA Sri Lanka and holds professional memberships in several different accounting bodies across the globe, including Australia CPA. Welcome, Mahesh. Next, we have Mario Di Costa. I would define him as a new gen accountant, not the traditional old school accountant that we walk into day in and day out in offices. He is currently managing the performance and the analytics team at the Queensland Investment Corporation, otherwise known as the KYC. Also, Mario has been part of several powerhouses in Australia, such as Fulton Hogan, EY, and the famous supermarket chain Woolworths Group. Mario is a graduate from the University of Adelaide, and he holds qualification from CA and New Zealand. Welcome, Mario. Welcome to the session today. Finally, we have an entrepreneur, Sumit Dissanayake. Sumit is the CEO of Brisca, a leading financial services provider operating out of Brisbane. He worked as a group financial controller in many leading corporates before he took on the reins of entrepreneurship 8 years back. And ever since, he has been growing and growing. Sumit is a graduate from University of Sri Jawadhanapura. He holds his postgraduate from Australian Institute of Business, and he is also a member of CPA Australia. Welcome, gentlemen. I hope all of you are doing good. So now, the topic for the day: how to transform yourself into an Australian accounting career. Mahesh, first question I would like to raise it with you, the Global Trotter. Mahesh, can you tell us from your humble beginnings from EY in Sri Lanka, and what drive you to move around so many countries until you decided to call Australia your home?
Well, Sanjay, I hope you can hear clearly. And
All good.
what a remarkable introduction. I never thought that I would get that such an introduction in my life. And thanks for that humble introduction. And first of all, thanks for having me here, Sumit and Sanjay. It's my pleasure to join this session, your first session of the Briska education. Well, yes, as you explained, I started my career, I think in year 2000. Don't count my age now. Year 2000 in Sri Lanka. So then eventually move around a few countries. Over the last 24 years, I think I have worked in all the big four firms. Finally, I settled in the KPMG, where I believe that I truly belong. In terms of the cultures and the value and the principles that I daily share. And so I think the key part of your question, Sanjay, what drives these changes? I think the first reason I would say pretty common to everybody that as a young professional, once you qualified, your first thinking was to broaden your experience beyond your horizon and in Sri Lanka, right? Those days, I think Sri Lanka was following the Sri Lankan accounting standard, and we were never in the international financial reporting framework. So as a young colleague, so my first desire was to broaden my skill set. So I believe it's common to everybody who joined this call as well. The secondly, Sanjay, I think I always have this internal desire or internal conflict. I would say that I am quite unsettled to settle in a comfort zone for a long time. I always want to settle my boundaries beyond the comfort zone and see what I can do more. Even my current role, even though I settle in one professional firm, the things I do so diverse. The new projects, innovative thinking, and things I bring into the practice. So I think I enjoy myself doing that type of work rather than stick onto the traditional professional world. So I think those two are the key criteria that drive my change. And then so far, I would say that it worked in favor of me and no complaint.
No complaints indeed, Mahesh. Lovely to see you over here after traveling across borders, absorbing cultures, and seeing the man that you truly are today. Lovely. Mario, the next question is actually over to you. Mahesh clearly explained his journey, how he gradually settled in Australia. Our audience, and even I, am keen to know how you came to Australia and how did it happen? Pretty sure there's a lovely story behind it.
Yeah, thanks, Sanjay. And then again, I'll start by saying thank you for having me on the webinar. And my story is not as exciting as Mahesh, that's for sure. He's traveled the world. But yeah, look, I moved to Australia back in 2008. Moved to Adelaide, and it was a bit of I was one of those fortunate people where I got to move fairly young. Not so the challenge I had was actually moving when I was really young by myself and being living without my parents when I was under 18. I think when I moved here, I was about 16. So it was a big cultural shock. And also because I was under 18, living with an Australian family was something of a big shock initially, because the culture is different, the food's different, everything's different, and then you move here and it's trying to find your feet. And yeah, so and then sort of moved around in Australia a lot within different states, and I guess that sort of taught me how to be resilient and also adapt to the environment.
Wonderful. So being resilient, a phrase that came into action with pandemic, but clearly you had resiliency, I would say, going back in 2008, and a long journey indeed. Now, Sumit, we clearly identified how Mahesh settled, on the shores of Australia and how Mario settled on the shores of Australia. How was your journey? How did you manage to ship
Yeah.
yourselves?
It happened a long time ago, actually. Now, I've been living in Australia for 15 years. So I landed in Australia in 2008 in the middle of GFC. So you guys can imagine, like, the trouble that I had to undergo. Then I landed in Australia, in a new country, in the middle of GFC. And it's been a journey, and I was fortunate to work with a number of companies and during my tenure in Australia. And then at some point, then I decided to move out of that and then started the entrepreneur's journey. To tell you why I decided to come to Australia, clearly there was no reason. There was no reason. It's just, you are a young chartered accountant, young graduate, the trend is like, when someone living in a developing country, so you have a desire or you get that urgency to get out of the country. So that's the true reflection, the reason why I sort of came to Australia. There was no any particular reason.
All right. Thanks, Sumit. And yes, as you clearly told, the urge, the need to explore better opportunities is something that a lot of our audience, all of us included, would have had and willing to explore. Thanks for that. Now, we have a lovely idea as to where our roots are. Now let's dig deep. Mahesh, being the global trotter out of all of us, you are clearly the one who experienced a lot of cultural differences, different work practices, and so on and so forth. So what were those main cultural differences that you encountered when you were transitioning into a new role in unfamiliar countries?
I guess so many cultural differences, Sanjay, because I think cultures of countries are very unique. Even though we belong to one human race, I think it is very important to sometimes observe those differences and adapt yourself to that type of environment. It's never been easy. It takes some time and the courage. If I were to explain that three areas that a person who's trying to settle in a new country to focus on, I would say the first one is your adaptability. So the moment you take a decision to relocate to another country, it involves so much of decision. It's a very stressful decision. If you could think about a person who's having a family to settle in another country, it involves support of their loved ones and so many decisions. Which is school that you're going to put your kids? How do you going to settle in? How do you going to land in that country that you never know? And how do you find the place to live? So it's a very stressful decision. I think you need a lot of support from your loved ones to adapt to the environment initially. That's a key thing. And also the other thing that I think as a person, I made a mistake in an area where without understanding the perspective of the nationalities that on that country, because I, as a Sri Lankan, a young accountant, I think we always have this our personal prejudice that we know everything when we settle in a country and we put ourselves, our priorities ahead of others' perspective. We start to judge onto the conclusion without actively listening to a person. So that I think is a key, the key mistake that I made in the past. So I would highly encourage this audience, if one thing that you want to get away from this work, the webinar, is that to think about others' perspective before your perspective. I understand you're going through a change in your life, but it's very important to understand others' perspective. The other important thing that is also relevant to understanding the perspective is to how do you practice your listening skill. So listening to somebody is totally different from hearing. So you hear this webinar, but if you don't listen to it, you won't get the message that we are delivering. So young most of our young accountants, especially coming out from a country like Sri Lanka, we good at hearing, but not good at listening. So listening involves so much of patience and to go through all the psychological aspect without putting your prejudice or without judging the content of the person who's telling this story to you. You listen to him and to understand what are their perspective. I think these are the three things, like adaptability, understanding the perspective, and active listener would help you to be successful and settle in a place. I have seen many people, and also my personal experiences, I would be more successful when I start to actively listen. The moment I put my prejudice without listening to them, I will fail.
Thanks a lot for those lovely 3 points: adaptability, listening, and then listening into others' perspectives as well. So
Yes.
something that most Sri Lankans, ourselves included, not that we are
Including.
perfectionist, that we do at one point. Sumit, you being of that skill, I would like you to add, is there anything else that you think you can add over here?
Yeah, what Mahesh said was quite like, I completely agree with what he said about the listening, right? So we tend to speak more as Sri Lankans than listening. So, and we always try to get something out very quickly. So we don't have the patience to wait and then go at the pace. That's one of the early lessons that I learned, and one of the advice that I was given at the early stage here, to slow down. So just slow down, and then, just try to go with the pace where someone can understand you. And there are reasons for that as well, why you want to sort of get out very quickly, because it's your nervousness, your naive nature. So I can understand and relate to why it is. But if I knew that before, I would have done a better communication than what I've been doing at that point in time.
All right, thanks a lot, Sumit. So all of us have to fail, and failing quickly is the best way to learn, rather than waiting and planning ahead. And as you said, slow growth beats everything. At the end of the day, that's what's sustainable. That's what lasts, not the gradual, quick, short wins, as Sumit and Mahesh clearly highlighted. Mario, you are a next-gen accountant, as I introduced you. And looking at your profile, it clearly doesn't tell anywhere that you are an accountant, unless, of course, you studied deep. So how did you, from the traditional old school accountant, end up in a premier state institution and leading a team as well? How did you make the switch? I would love to know.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I sometimes ask myself, how did I end up here? But it is. I think I like anyone else. As soon as I finished my accounting degree and got my CA, my path was set on becoming the financial controller and off to a CFO role. That was the path that I was really wanted to go on. But over time, what I realized is, when I was working through different organizations, the finance functions were changing, and especially in the mature organizations. And you could see that across various, the small organizations were slowly adapting what the big organizations were doing. And I was lucky enough to work in the private equity space, where we did a lot of restructuring and implementation of systems, and also being able to drive value of the business. So that's where I really enjoyed being part of the business, being part of the decision making and influencing the business decisions, setting sort of not the short-term decisions, but more the longer term decisions. And that's where we start to see the technological implementations, and also how these systems are going to impact how the finance functions operate. And you quickly start to see the data and analytics space is a growing space, because the CFOs are constantly asking questions around what are my scenarios? What if COVID happens, what can I do? What need to be able to react very quickly and be able to run lots and lots of different scenarios. So saw the space I saw that space, it was growing, and it was an area that wasn't really developed just yet. I mean, it's still developing because it's a space that skills are still quite hard to find. And this is why I really enjoyed it. It's a new space and an unknown space, and I am a curious person. So, and there's all this exciting stuff happening in that space around using of AI to do predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics. So it's no longer just building a P&L balance sheet and commenting on what's happened. It's more about what's driving value, where can we save costs, well, what are our different scenarios if COVID hits, what different options we've got. So it really keeps me engaged, and that's where I made the decision that this is the path I want to take on. I did do financial accounting, and for a very short period, which I don't get me wrong, it taught me a lot of good skills, and also I did a lot of transactional accounting, and my passion was in the performance analytics space, and it was a new space, and that's what was really exciting.
Pretty exciting it is, because data keeps on adding up, and they say the data is a new oil. So being accountants, we need to know how to mine it. And yes, on that note, you spoke of COVID as well, sort of being a catalyst. Mahesh, a quick question to you. How do you see accountants kind of be adaptable into COVID during that period of transition? Did they make a lovely switch, or how is it?
I guess, to be fair, given that COVID is new for everybody, I think the accountant did a pretty good job, right? I think we were so lucky we are in this era of information technology, and then the tools were there, and the infrastructure was there. I think everything adapted into the situation quite fast, and then I think every profession did quite well. Of course, the medical profession battled with that because they have a personal interaction with the patient. They need to do a personal visit. Certain profession that really struggle with that, but otherwise, accountants, I think I would say that they did pretty well, especially when it's come to outsourcing type of professions. I think that really helped them to drive their strategy through this COVID period.
Exactly. My thoughts as well, and most of our thoughts as well, because accountants, they actually saw a boom in themselves in upskilling. And as you clearly said, one of the main points, adaptability. It's quite integral for an accountant to succeed, given the fact that we are sticking to P&Ls and the balances and so on and so forth. Sumit, over to you. So what I would like to know is this. You're an entrepreneur, the odd one out of all of us. Why did you decide to deviate from the strict 9-to-5 corporate job and have that leap of faith, which I would like to call, into entrepreneurship?
That's a great question, Sanjay, and very interesting. I have a very interesting answer for that. Accounting is always a very respectful, very prestigious job. So I'm not underestimating the power of accounting or the power of the qualifications that I obtained in my career. So, but the personality is I think the person I tried to made me an entrepreneur from the accounting, but I'm still using accounting, but in a different way to what most of the accountants use it, right? So the business that I'm in, it's still we are helping lots of businesses through accounting, in the way of accounting, but I'm not doing accounting like what most of the other accountants do. First of all, actually, it's the fulfillment factor. So usually, people need to understand what fulfills your needs at the end of the day. So I had a reasonable accounting career, and I was very happy with everything at the beginning. But when I started realizing that I got something beyond accounting, especially when I was in companies, when I was working, then I found that I have more keen interest over people than the numbers. And that helped me to realize that, I can do something to inspire people, or to, do something beyond that number game. And that one of the reasons that I thought, okay, so let's give it a go here, and then, work with more people, or work with more different things than accounting. And from the other side is like, I don't know, it's probably from the, from my childhood, I had a bit of an unsettled nature in me, which I didn't realize until a bit late that you are unsettled. So you always want something new. And accounting gives you that opportunity as well to a degree, but within the framework, within the accounting framework. But I want to do something beyond that framework and do something new. So as you know, I'm a bit unsettled all the time. So I don't compromise. I just keep moving and do something new, right? So this about, again, personality, right? And nothing against accounting. Accounting helps me in anything that I do, but at the same time, I was trying to understand me more and fulfilling my desire. Last but not least is the insecurity that I felt in my career journey in accounting. So especially when I moved to Australia with a young family and trying to build a career, and there's a lot of challenges other than the career challenges you have. Usually you need to expect these things as well when you are trying to transform your accounting career in Australia. It's not going to be like walking in the park kind of a thing. So there's a lot of challenges coming your way, and especially when you have a family. So sometimes you put the family first, and then compromise your accounting dreams. Like everyone, when I came to Australia, I had a dream to become a CFO of a listed company, right? So that's the usual traditional path that everyone wants to follow. But things got changed. Then I had to put my family first, and then do something that will stabilize the family situation. So I'm trying hard, and I came a path that I could come in the accounting journey, and then build up some of the skills that I needed to become an entrepreneur. And I'm very happy where I am, and now I have a different path to follow, but I still have the respect and and the attachment to accounting. I don't think it will go away, because it's part of me, it's part of my DNA.
Lovely. Part of your DNA and part of a lot of accountants' DNA, I would say. It's just that figuring out what we have in ourselves and defining it. Mario, quick question on that, because Smith clearly told the sense of curiosity and sense of drive. You clearly told that you had the same thing as well. And in your space, I'm pretty sure you're dealing up with a lot of tech-related companies as well. Do you see a lot of accountants in that space?
Yeah, we are starting to see a lot more of the accountants in that space, especially in the consulting firms, definitely. So a lot of the accountants are going into this space because I think we are naturally very logical. We think through the problems very logically. So we're naturally sort of great fits for these types of roles. And it's an exciting space. Like, it's a lot to learn. It's a lot to challenge ourselves. And you still get to, like Sumit said, you still get to have your toes in the finance world, but still get to do quite a lot interesting work on that analysis and performance and influence the directions of the business. So yeah, we are seeing a lot more people in the ERP planning to implementation space, especially as business consultants who can translate business logic and business processes for the developers to develop. So that's a very hard skill set to find, and it's a great skill set to have.
Yes, a lovely strength that everyone else can be jealous of, but for you, you can be that crafty tool, as Mario said. And yes, so accountants, if you think you're confining yourselves, no. Here's the good news. Explore the horizons that you have. And Mahesh, over to you again. So in your transitionary career until you gradually settled home in Australia, were there any specific skills or understandings that you saw as a gap in yourself that you were required to fulfill to what you are today. And the next question is, are you still in your self-discovery journey?
I think Sanjay, we will never stop our self-discovering stage until we finish our, until we live, we will be self-discovering a lot of things, I guess.
Agree. Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's an interesting question. I think in the interest of audience, I would put it this way. One of the main skill, I would think that articulate your matter. How do you bring the storytelling conversation into your day-to-day conversation with your workmate or your stakeholders? Because I think Sumit touched on this point in his response to you, the first question. We tend to package a lot of information in a one conversation. I don't know where this come from. Probably the language that we have been using in most of Asian countries, but when it's come to the English language, I think it's very important for us to articulate the matter more clear and concise manner, so that the other party will get the message clearly. So I think in my experience, I'm sure many of you have a similar experience where we try to explain so many things in a one communication. The conversation or the interaction will ended up in a, I would say, very bizarre manner, without having clear action or resolution, and unsatisfied stakeholders. I have seen many cases where if you can't package, if you can't deliver your message within 2 minutes, you will basically distract the other person, and you won't perhaps get his or her attention anymore after all. So this, I think, is as a key when you, especially when you are settling in a new country, because people are watching you, people are monitoring you, and how well you present yourself, how well you communicate the matter. It need not to be very a serious manner that you need to communicate the your ideas and the message. It's need to be a very simple and authentic manner. You talk to a person that other person will get your perspective. I think that's something that we all need to practice in our day-to-day life. I think more clear you communicate, the less the trouble that you will be getting. And I think it's a human nature that everybody will resonate with a person who communicate well. If you look at the in a macroeconomic environment or geopolitical environment, all these problems that we will having because of the lack of the breakdown of the communication and the misunderstanding. And the other thing that I want to deliver to this audience, no matter how good you are, no matter what level you're operating in your organization, if you cannot deliver the communication, if you cannot deliver, if you are unable to deliver your message to other party, I think the chances of your settling in, or chances of your winning others will be very less. So this is something I'm self-discovering every day. And how do I communicate my message to other people? Because it always depend on, it's also depend on the person who is sitting in the other side of the table. So you need to understand the attitude, and you need to understand that person and package your deliver your story to him or her in a way that resonate their perspective.
Quite enlightening. I went through a transitional phase when you said that, because yes, all of us have that. Most Sri Lankans have that thing called word vomit, where we tell everything, but not the one which we want to say. So packaging, as you clearly told, has to be lovely, and communication, because we pay a lot of attention to technical, but we don't really sharpen our soft skills. And there you go, the ship is sinking. So thanks, Mahesh. Thanks a lot for highlighting the importance of everything, and especially storytelling and communication. Mario, over to you. The next question is actually something which sparkles my eyes these days, and kind of always keeps me up at night. Is all about how do you see the role of accounting changing in the forthcoming years? Because you're the next gen digital nomad accountant. There you go, the tagline that I would love to give you. And with these new tools of AI, GPT, you wake up, you have another tool, you think it's over. Where do you see yourself? Or where do you see an accountant's kind of transitioning?
Yeah, again, yeah, it's a very, very interesting question because, like you said, we wake up next day and there's a new technology, and you got to quickly read up and try to understand where this is going to go, especially ChatGPT, which is the new buzzword. But at the moment, it's still a long way away from being integrated into, especially the large organizations. It has the concerns around the privacy. It has concerns around what sort of information is getting shared and how it's processing information. But so things like artificial intelligence and in general, like your machine learning, deep learning, all of those has been there for a long period of time. And they are becoming more and more mainstream, especially in the high transactional volume organizations. And I see that, well, I mean, we use it quite often. Even when I was at Woolworths Group, they were using it nearly 7-8 years ago. So it's for their demand planning and whatnot. So there are lots of tools. So the finance teams, I'm seeing a clear shift where the financial control and financial planning and analysis is clearly splitting out. So the performance and analytics teams are constantly looking to the future, and that's where these tools are getting used, and also in the data that's getting fed in from the financial control teams to make sure they're cleansed, and the FP&A teams can pick it up for their, like a nice clean set of data for their long-term forecasting and planning. The financial control getting more and more centralized and automated, and also getting centralized into different countries, because we get to see the labor arbitrage there, because those compliance type, transactional type work, it's great. It's the easiest way to centralize, because the nature of the work is quite easy to just repeat. And so over time, what I'm seeing is this performance and analytics space is where the CFOs are going to constantly talk about, because that's the piece that they're interested in. They are interested in the compliance space, but that is getting heavily automated, heavily transactional, and heavily centralized. So it just runs. But the FP&A space is where a lot of the investment is going, to understand what that direction looks like for the organization, and being able to understand what the other organizations are doing, and have to be competitive in the market. So you have to keep up with the technology, otherwise you're going to fall behind, and some other organizations going to quickly go and grab market share off you. So yeah, it's an interesting area. It's hard to say exactly where finance is going, but what I'm seeing is it's very much in the data and analytics space, being able to analyze and draw upon valuable insights and tell a story. And I guess going back to Mahesh's point, it's very important to tell a story. You can have all the data in the world and all the valuable tools, but if you can't draw upon conclusions and also tell the story, and be able to influence, the data's nothing, and that's a key.
Yes, as you clearly said, there is nothing unless, of course, the tools are there. So can we safely assume that our jobs will not get lost because of GPT?
we can definitely, at least in the short term, yes. But what is interesting is like the finance teams are quite often using ChatGPT to refine their commentary in P&L. So we can see ChatGPT typing up brief commentary on our retrospective type reports, doing the analysis. But it is hard for the organization still to churn enough information to start telling a predictive story. But again, it all depends on what we feed it. So we're still going to need accountants or people in that space who plays in the accounting world as well as in the data space to help these tools grow and be embedded into the organization. So I don't think in the short term it's going to happen, but over the long term, it will. I think the skill sets that we will need will be very different.
Got it. Got it. And accountants need to kind of transition as well, as you clearly said, Mario. Thank you so much. So moving on to Sumit, we clearly highlighted with Mahesh and Mario the skill sets that they got kind of grasped and learned in grooming themselves. What are the specific skill sets and the learnings that you had to undergo when you took on the journey of entrepreneurship?
Let me approach differently to that question, Sanjay. Not only for the entrepreneurs, what I'm going to talk about is like in general, for accountants as well as for anyone, right? So because my colleagues touched upon very specific skill set that we need as accountants, and the points that I want to highlight are just pretty, not technical. And like what you said, that Mario said, like, of course, there are things that the machine or the AI or anyone can't beat or replace. So let me tell you, the first one is, learn to inspire and influence people, right? I don't think machine can do that, not anytime sooner. So if we learn to inspire, if we learn to influence, of course, that's a skill set that you can carry and keep it under your belt for anything, like, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you're an accountant, or whether you are someone else, right? So it's a skill set that you learn. That's the other part of it, right? It's not something that's going to be given. It's something that you need to work hard towards and, to learn. So, but it's a skill set that's hard to replace. So you'll be very future-proof if you have that skill set. The second thing I would say, from the entrepreneur's perspective, or even an accountant climbing up the ladder. So you need beyond, you need to understand businesses beyond accounting. So you need to understand the cross-functional, functions like, sales, marketing, production, operation, how they operate. So you need to have a bit of an interest over learning them. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be master in any of these things. You don't need to, but at least you need to embrace. At least you need to try and understand what they are trying to do and how it is connecting with your numbers. Because for you to tell the story, like what Mahesh says, right? So you need to have some insights. But if you are going to put yourself in a bubble where you are only working within the accounting framework, so your story is not going to be complete. So make sure that you always keep an eye on what other people are doing and how it is connecting and how it is, how the dots are connected for us to present something more insightful. Right, so that's the second one. And the third one, I would say, this is very, very, if an accountant trying to convert or transform into an entrepreneur, you have to control your emotions. That's a very hard thing. Even for me, it took a while. It took at least good 5 years to control my emotion, like, to wear the hat of the entrepreneur. Especially when you are an accountant, you are a sunk cost. So the effort that you have made to become an accountant and to collect all the qualifications, the sunk cost is very high. So you are not willing to let that go, right? So you always try to sort of keep it and thinking that, if I lose that, it's going to be really hard and it's a big loss because you would have spent 10, 15 years sometimes to get that qualifications and, the experience. So, but the entrepreneur journey, of course, you have to let go, like everything else. At some point, you let go. And the controlling your emotion is very, very important. And especially if you are coming to a country like Australia and trying to build a career, it's very, very important for you to have that consistency and the boldness to stay focused on one thing and until you see results, because especially in entrepreneur's journey, you're not going to get results overnight. It is a continuous effort, and we are still doing that, like what Mahesh does. It's a self-discovery thing. So we are still learning, we are still adapting, we are still keeping ourselves in the process, right? So you need to control your emotion, and sometimes you have to wear a different hat. So, so regardless we are the accountant or not, but it's going to help. So having that accounting qualification and having that background is always going to help. So no doubt. So it's not a complete loss, but sometimes you have to let go beyond what you think.
Thanks a lot, Sumit. As you clearly said, an accountant has to wear a lot of hats, not only the accountant hat. If you are to survive in the next forthcoming years, and you need to wear a lot of hats, definitely if you're coming to Australia, for sure. And we have got a few questions from the audience here. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you do have any questions, now would be the best time to slot it into the Q&A. I have got a few, and I'm gonna pick those and share it with our panelists. So let me go ahead with the first. The first question would be, what I will raise this with Mahesh, because you're the best in answering the developed markets like Australia. So what will you see as opportunities in developed markets in Australia?
Thanks, Sanjay. I think it's a very difficult question to answer. The situation is changing. The situation today will be totally different from 3 months from now. But one thing is certain that with a lot of dialogue is going on in the international arena about with the Paris Agreement, and then especially on the ESG area, environmental sustainability and governance area. I think there are a lot of regulations coming up. There are regulation in Europe, especially multiple regulatory bodies are working on helping the countries, how the countries are achieving their carbon neutral state by 2050 or beyond that. So the same thing will happen in Asia, and the same thing will happen in Australia. So I think if this group is want to focus on one area that where they can grab the opportunities, I would highly recommend the group to keep eye on ESG area, because ESG, if you look at the ESG, I think there's a huge role that accountants, chartered accountants and engineers can play, because it involves a lot of numbers, it involves a lot of report writing, it involves a lot of similar skill that are resonate with our chartered accountants skill that we are developing. This is a growing area. Everybody is in the early stage of the learning curve, not only profession, but also the universities. And universities are also coping up with the changes in the environment in the world, and then they're trying to put new curriculums and new education program that to accommodate the requirement of this ESG as a subject matter. So I think things are quite petty in everywhere currently. The knowledge, everybody is seeking for knowledge, more knowledge on ESG. Things are developing. So I think if I would suggest this group, one of the best area that I would recommend is the ESG for these accountants or engineers who are joining in this session. Keep eye on that. There'll be a lot of opportunities coming in coming years.
So ESG, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. If you are having eyes on the shores of Australia, you want to improve yourselves, that's one particular area that you can nurture yourselves on. Thanks, Mahesh. Next question from the audience, I would like to raise it with Mario, because you're the best person to answer. So it says here, what will be the highest paid job? Is it a IT or accountancy? And I'm going to slightly edit it. Or is it a mix between the two? And what is your idea about this?
Yeah, that's a very tough question. The answer is it depends, because you can be an accountant and be paid well as you can be an IT person and be paid well. It really depends on your passion and what you want to do. I think the key is not so much driving yourself based on the salary, but more on the fact that what are you going to enjoy, because that's the key to succeeding in your role, and that would in turn bring higher income. So it's a tricky one, because IT, yes, when we say IT, there's so many different roles of IT. When we say accountants, there's different specialties within accounting as well. So someone with both the skill sets, that's probably the best place to be in. we're having the blend between IT and finance, but yeah, it really comes down to what you really want to do and what you're going to enjoy in the long term. And that is more likely to make you succeed rather than pushing on to the salary, drawing on a particular salary.
Exactly. So precisely. I mean, money can bring you the rewards you want, but if you burn yourself out doing something that you do not want, is it worth doing it? I'll leave that up to you, with the audience. Thanks, Mario. And the final question raised by audience would be for Sumit. Sumit, it says here, what are some of the most in-demand accounting specializations that you can think which should happen in Australia?
Yeah, so from my research or from my experience, I think there's a huge demand for the reporting. So the proper financial reporting, right, and management reporting as well, because end of the day, so a lot of people do accounting, but the outcome or the finished product is not quite where it should be. Right, there's a lot that you can add, but if you are mastering that, like, to bring in the items like the Power BI, dashboards, and analytics, like what Mario does from that end. So there's a huge demand for that type of role, accounting roles. And management accountants is also still in demand. And because there's in Australia, there's a huge SME sector. And in this, when you say SMEs, there's a larger end of SMEs where they need that kind of support. I know there's lots of companies that are struggling, and even we are helping them as well for them to understand their business, right? So they grow fairly quickly because of their passion and the support that they get in the economy, but still their financial processes are not mature enough, or the reporting is not mature enough. So that's where another area that we can help and our people can easily fit into, especially the Sri Lankans. We have that skill set. I can see that's a very, very transferable, very easy skill set, and then come in and then build some reporting format, especially the reports that help them make decisions, the day-to-day decisions, like not probably strategic decisions, but the day-to-day decision making, the tools that we can create. So the management accountants are good at doing things like that, like for example, the costing report maybe, or job costing report. They're very simple things for an accounting perspective, but I know still some of the companies are struggling to, get the outcome that they want. So sometimes we don't need to overthink. And if you come and do a good job, especially connect the dots and trying to make people understand what they're doing and how, the outcome is getting produced. And like Mario said, your passion is more important than money. So money will follow if you are passionate about what you do, and if you do it well. So money is an outcome, and you always get, more money. It doesn't matter whether it's accounting or IT or whatever. I know some of my colleagues, like, how much they earn is like, when you look at it, like, that's like, some of them even don't earn that much, in their lifestyle, right? But they're accountants, they're CFOs now, right? So there's, potentials are enormous. So, but I think money will flow. What is important is for you to settle down with something very interesting that it makes you really excited about and motivated to do, and then you can do a better job, right? So that's what I see. That's the trend in the market. I'm sure it's always the case. If you if you want to build a career and a good accounting background, accounting it's kind of a atmosphere or a accounting career here in Australia. So first thing is the passion.
Thank you, Sumit. So passion, it is not money. Money comes second or third, but if you go with passion, everything else will follow. Thanks, Sumit. So next question is specifically to Mario, where I'll kind of distribute out there. So it says, what is the pathway to go for young accountants with a higher desire for analytics than IT? A short answer, if you can.
Yeah, so in terms of moving to Australia and trying to get those skill sets, it is still a very early area that's still growing in terms of skills. There's not much opportunity, unfortunately, even in Australia, to develop your skills. So the best part, I've taken, I want to give my experience. I've taken opportunities where they popped up. So I worked in organizations, as soon as there's an ERP implementation, I put my hand up and went on and took those roles. And because I'm an accountant from background, my skill set gap was the IT side. So really first understand your gap. Is it the IT side or is it the accounting side? Which way do you sort of need to develop? And then really target those opportunities. Really once you join an organization in Australia, they're quite open to having those conversations and to develop you. So it is very important to have a good vision of where you want to go, and then taking those opportunities and having those conversations with your line managers and also the colleagues to say, hey, this is where I want to be. These are the skill sets that I need to grow, and take all the opportunities when they come on board. It's very hard to do something. I think in Australia, it's very difficult to learn something just going to a university or doing a course. You can do all that, but I think it's more valued when you've applied that in an organization or in a environment. So yeah, I think it's really understanding which skill set gap you've got, and then taking every opportunity when it comes, and to make sure that they jump onto every opportunity.
Got it. Thanks, Mario. So it's all about mostly, I would say, soft skills, putting your hand up and then going with the passion and all that. So I guess we are nearly over there, but I would like to invite our panelists with just one common question and give us a short answer as a giveaway to our audience here today. Mahesh, I'll start with you. Any parting thoughts that you would like to add to budding accountants who are willing to cross the oceans and come to Australia? Any advice?
Well, I think given everything going on back in Sri Lanka, I would highly encourage folks to try something different. I don't think things are getting better any sooner. So I think it's very important folks to explore some opportunities in other markets, not only in Australia, but also in anywhere in the world. I think the one encouraging message for them is never stop trying. Keep trying until your dreams come true. And more importantly, as a person, start to appreciate all your effort. You may never achieve the dreams like when you hear in Sumit. Sumit and I both grew up in the same university. I have been seeing him for many years. So I think you can hear from him. I think dreams never come true overnight. So start to appreciate yourself, every effort that you're putting, and there might be darker days in your life, but that doesn't mean the entire life is dark. There'll be a sunshine one day. So keep trying and start appreciate all your effort, no matter whatever the negative thought that are coming to your way. Be positive always. I'm sure everybody who joined this session will win one day. Thanks, Sanjay.
I like your thoughts, Mahesh. The sun will always rise. Yeah, it will indeed. It will. I'm gonna treasure that quote. I'm gonna quote it, and I'm gonna say Mahesh told me so as well. Thanks a lot, Mahesh.
Thanks, Sanjay.
Mario, your thoughts? Any parting thoughts that you would like to add?
Yeah, I think for me, it's around being open-minded and be brave, and take the leap and challenge yourself. Because if you don't challenge yourself, you won't work out what your potential is going to be. So just because we are accountants doesn't mean we have to be constrained within just the accounting space. There's plenty of opportunity, and follow your passion. I think that's the key, because then you'll really enjoy. Especially in Australia, it's key to be able to articulate why you want to do something and what is that long-term vision look like for you. All
right, so follow your passion indeed. And so before I ask any parting thoughts, there's one question that we just got from our Q&A, which I would like to raise it with you. It says here, I'll read live. How possible for a mid-career accountants and CFOs to make a career break in Australia?
I think Australia is the best place. Here, anytime you can, take a career break or, to go in a different direction. So I haven't seen this opportunity in Sri Lanka when I was there. So you are confined into one area, and it's very hard for you to get yourself out of it. But here I have seen even there are classic examples that people changed even at their later stage and then start succeeding in what they're doing, especially following their dreams, following their passion. And this is the best country for you to, if you come and then you have a different caliber, different kind of a character, of course, you can change. And there's a lot of support around. There's a lot of things that you can do. And I don't think, because here, it doesn't matter who you are. It's what matters is like, the path that you follow and the dream that you want to sort of always pursue.
As well, so follow your dreams. And Sumit, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, the one that I always say to Sri Lankans, right? When they come here, burst your bubble. Don't come here and expecting to get into the Sri Lankans community here. It's always good to be part of it, but don't stay there. So just be vulnerable, and you need to feel the uncomfortability. Then only you will grow. So, but if you find a shelter, if you find a bubble where you are comfortable, that means your growth is going to be slow. So come with that and then expose yourself and enjoy the journey.
So get comfortable in being uncomfortable. I'll quote it in that way. And so, yeah, thanks a lot, Mahesh. Thank you, Mario. And thank you, Sumit. It's pretty late in the night here in Australia. So thanks a lot for committing. In light of sharing your insights, your career, your stories that help you succeed over here with our crowds in Sri Lanka. So I'm pretty sure that I've learned a lot. I'm taking a lot of golden nuggets that I will be treasuring, and pretty sure that our participants who are joining all the way from Sri Lanka and few other countries as well will take away as well. So it's been lovely chatting with all of you, and it's been a lovely, insightful session too. And as I clearly said, this session would have not been possible if not for the sponsorship of Brisk Education. And we will be having regular webinars, and we will, of course, inform you through our social media handles and wherever possible. And I again thank you, Mahesh. Thank you, Mario. And thanks, Sumit. Thanks a lot. And most and of not, ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot for being a lovely audience. Let's get connected soon. Let's tune in for the next webinar. And until then, take care, goodbye, and enjoy your Easter.